Hey, how do you feel about some high rarity cards, or maybe some foreign ones, or maybe be ahead of the game with others by preparing for future set releases with very quick shipping? Check out EJ Gaming and use code British5 on checkout for 5% off on all your orders. Link in the description.
Greetings duelists and welcome to another video. Today is the first day of our updated TCG Forbidden Limited list. Since the format has already just begun, we don't have a lot to go for when it comes to what is solid in the format as of yet, which means that I'll be covering something else that was announced this past weekend until the format shapes up a little bit. Yesterday on the 24th, we had announced the update for the Forbidden Limited list for the OCG. And I feel like this is a perfect timing to discuss this list because it will show you the precedent of how the OCG historically has practiced with certain strategies, and it also holds a foothold of what could be for us coming next. And most likely see how the TCG adapts to certain decks and strategies. Without further ado, let's begin. So Forbidden, we got Agido, we got Kelbeck, we got Chaos Ruler, and we have Heroic Champion. I'll discuss this one first because it's like the easiest one. This card has already been gone in Master Duel, and it's also been gone in the TCG for years. So the fact that it took them this long to ban this card is kind of absurd. You can make the argument that Bamboozling Shadow Gossip was like the main catalyst that made this card problematic, but I just feel like this card is just very ill designed. Like eventually there will be a deck that can abuse it in the future more than not, so it's just for the best to just take it out of the game in all formats. So now this card is not legal anywhere, meaning that most likely there won't be a future with any strategies involving cards that summon this guy, like Numbers Avail. Okay, let's talk about Chaos Ruler. This card already got banned in the TCG. It's still legal in Master Duel, but in the TCG it went away around October last year. So this card is just very, very ill designed. It was just going to be very, very problematic, like more and more. And if we look at the OCG, we know that Tearlaments has been doing very, very well despite so many hits that the deck has already received. And Chaos Ruler was just one main catalyst for that equation. The Diabell Star engine that is debuting in Age of Overlord is a catalyst that they've been playing that facilitated the summon of this card. So it was just a ticking time bomb. Like it was more sooner than later that Konami knew that they had to address this card. Like by far this was the best synchro level 8 that we've gotten in the game, and like we've already had history with other synchro 8s in the past. Just look at Sephiroth Lord Omega. Okay, Agido and Kelbeck. So this just goes back to the Chaos Roller argument or discussion. Like Tearlaments has been very, very rampant in the OCG, and these two cards existing are the things that make this deck very, very high rollers. Pretty much in order for Tearlaments not to be a road deck anymore, you need to take cards out of the deck that really makes it push over the edge above other decks. And these two cards are part of that. You also have other cards like the Grass Looks Greener, for example. You also have like Chaos Ruler, which is also gone. We already discussed that. There are slower cards like Needlebug Nest, but those are very hard to find and use. It was just a matter of time. These cards were very, very ill designed. The moment these cards got printed, we already knew that there was going to be a grim future involving these cards. And I like the approach that Konami made. Like basically they just banned the 2 mill cards and they just leave the shufflers. Like the shufflers are great, they're very strong at what they do, but they're bricks in your hand. They really don't facilitate any plays. You don't have any combo extension with like using those cards. So yeah, that's pretty much it for these. This is a very heavy hit for Tearlaments. Speaking of Tearlaments, now we go to a limited section. Tearlaments Kashtira. This is a very unorthodox hit. Like, if you already look at the OCG, you already know that Rhino Heart, Perler Rhino, and the 3 main girls are also limited. So, this is pretty much just Konami trying to, like, show a message to OCG players. They pretty much just want them to stop playing Tearlaments, but at the same time, they don't want to outright just kill the deck. They already done enough to gut the strategy, and they know that just banning the off and like the non-engine cards that facilitate the deck are just not going to be enough for this deck. That being said, now this card is limited. It's very hard to see what's going to be Tearlaments' future. After I discuss the ban list, I'm going to show you guys something, because despite the many hits, I still think the deck is still playable. But I'll cover that after I cover the ban list discussion. Next on the list is Block Dragon. This card got limited in Master Duel and then it got forbidden. This card was a 2 here in the OCG. Slowly but surely, Konami's realizing that Block Dragon is just a very ill-designed card. However, Maxi is still in the format, meaning that this deck is not as popular. And maybe this is like Konami's way of just saying, hey, the strategy is still legal, but it's now way more fragile. Now stuff like DD Crow can actually like really hurt you. Like other cards that can just stop you on your track, it just can be more and more problematic. So it's kind of rough to see what is the future of this deck, because a lot of main tools that were used on this strategy also got hit. Like for example, Smoke Grenade, and we see that Bike is no longer semi-limited, but Soul Piercer still is limited. I'll get to that in a second. So yeah, I don't know what it means for an Emancipator, but for now, I'd say this deck is not going to be top 3 like anytime soon. Now for semi-limits, you got Airlifter, Delicious, Rivalry, Girsu, Supreme King, Diagram, and the map. So let's talk about the map. This card got limited in the OCG. Basically, Flonderies was winning a lot in the OCG, and they do tournaments that are best of 1 format, and in a best of 1 environment, Flonderies is just way ahead of many decks. Like Flonderies is one of those decks where you really have to dedicate games 2 and 3 to see if you can actually defeat it. But in a best of 1 scenario, this deck was very dominant. Konami of the OCG pretty much realized that the hits to Flunder were a little bit too harsh. Like they already have Prosperity limited as well as Dimension Shifter semi-limited. So I don't see any qualms with this card returning. Like Flunderies is by no means a top meta contender. Like at least in the OCG. In the TCG it is a little bit more prevalent, but that is because the more favorable matchups for Flunderies are those that are popular in the format. So that's it for that. Dragonite Diagram. So this one is a little scary because Card of Demise is still a 3 in the OCG. Meaning that True Draco Stun is actually a viable strategy. Yes, granted, Masterpiece is still gone, but like outside of that, like this is a really strong card. I don't know if it's power crept or not, but I can tell you that when this card came out in 2017, this card really shaped the format. And we're talking a format where there was a tier 0 deck that did not play, that was not part of this archetype. So, yeah, that's goes to show you just how strong this card is. Like in 2020, we had this card limited, and it's very, very hard to tell if Konami ever wants this card back at multiples. But I say that OCG is a fair testing ground to see how this card shapes out. Draco Slayers slash True Dracos have not done anything as of late, so I think it's fair for this card to return. Supreme King Dragon Draco Worm. So this is an interesting semi-limit because the Zark deck actually has been topping in the OCG, even with this card limited. And this is one of the more important cards of that strategy. So maybe we might see a resurgence in Pendulums. It's very, very soon to tell. At the very end of next month, they are getting Phantom Nightmare. And that is a set that is going to support more Pendulum themes like Magic Spectre. So it's very, very soon to tell. But I'd say if Pendulums were doing already well without this card semi-limited, now they'll probably do even better. Girsu. So Orchest has not done a lot like in past years. I know when this card first got released, both the TCG and the OCG were a little bit skeptical on Orchest performance because this is a really, really strong card for them. However, I feel like Orchest has actually been power crept. Like, the deck is doing almost nothing in Master Duel, and in Master Duel is almost at full power as well, if not already at full power. So yeah, I'd say this card can even go back to 3, and I think Orchest will be fine. But yeah, time will tell. Rivalry. So this is a very, very interesting one because for those who don't remember, this card came out in Legacy of Darkness. If I'm not mistaken, I thought it was that set. Or maybe it was set before or after it. But this card has been out for a very, very long time. And in Master Duel, this card is already hit. But this is like the first hit in the OCG involving this card, at least to my memory. I like this approach. I really feel like if you are going to hit Floodgates, you should be hitting the other ones as well. I don't think it's fair to just hit Rivalry and not hit Ghost and Match, or there can be only one. But I do think that Konami is trying to take a little bit of a stance, seeing how cards are being popularized and just shifting them off the list a little by little. I do really hope that this card does get limited someday. I'm not a fan of decks that just win just because the existence of cards like this one. And yeah, I don't think Floodgates should be gone from the game. I only think that at multiples, you're going to see them more than the removal cards people are playing for them said Floodgates. And that's not fair for the combo players' perspective. Even though historically combo decks have been doing way better than stun decks, I still think if we're going to have cards in the game that are just going to be answers for them, we shouldn't have enough of a Floodgate and not enough for the other cards. It's different from a card like Lose One Turn. This is just a placeholder for limited cards, but it's very different seeing Lose One Turn from cards like Rivalry, because Lose One Turn is a Floodgate that has a condition. The real issue with cards like Rivalry is that it doesn't stop a combo deck from playing their game if they don't lose to Rivalry. One example would be the Cyber Spell decks. But yeah, now we'll talk about this. So Delicious Memory, semi-limited. So Purely is undoubtedly the second or third best deck in the OCG. The deck has been doing very, very well in the recent formats. And despite Sleepy Memory like getting hit, the deck has still done very, very, very well. So I think this is just an approach to like trying to hit the consistency of the deck a little bit more. I think that Delicious Memory going to 1 might happen in the future if Purely still like is still dominant after this hit. I feel like in the future, if Purely performs just as well here in the TCG, they should also follow the approach and also hit Sleepy Memory alongside Delicious Memory. But those are just my two stances. It's very soon to tell. But so far, I think Purely is going to be fine. Airlifter. So this is a consistency hit. Basically, Rescue Ace is like the best deck in the OCG by a good margin, and the main reason the deck is doing so well is because it has an engine that is being played that makes the deck ridiculously consistent. One issue with Rescue Ace here in the TCG is that the deck is not super consistent. Like you only have truly 6 1-card starters, and one of those 1-card starters are not like the most optimal one to open. The one you always want to open with is Airlifter. So I think Rescue Ace is still fine. I think if the Diabell Star engine is not going to get hit, the deck will still be as consistent as it still is. They're just going to opt for more copies of cards that involve starting your plays to circumvent the hit from Airlifter. So on limits, you got Armageddon Knight, Motorbike, and Light Stage. This is already unlimited in TCG, same as Motorbike. Soul Piercer is still limited in the OCG, so it's very hard to grasp if Super Heavy Samurai will be doing something over here, like over there. Scarecrow is still around, so Super Heavy Samurai is pretty much almost at full power, despite the Soul Piercer limit. But this deck was mainly popular because of Block Dragon, and a lot of tools that made this deck really strong has just been gutted already. So it's very soon what to tell about this. Armageddon Knight. So this is a scary one. However, it is a normal summon, and in the format that we're currently in, there are just a lot of more potent summons in the game than Armageddon Knight. That's not to say Armageddon Knight has been power crept. It just means that we're not in the correct format where Armageddon will actually be very abusable, at least in a not rogue deck. Another card that got unlimited is Mew Mew Mew. This card is forbidden in the TCG. Prank Kids have not done a lot in the OCG, so they're pretty much just pushing this card back. I think as long as Maxi exists, this deck is not going to perform super well because the card is just very inherently weak to it. The Adventure Engine is not a full power either. Like they don't have Griffin Rider, so like there are not many cards that can protect you from hand traps when you're playing a deck like Prank Kids. But yeah, it's very soon to tell. If this card was in the TCG, I can tell you this right now, Prank Kids would be like probably top 5 deck in the game. It has synergy with Sprite, it has synergy with Adamancipator, it has synergy like with a lot of different engines, Adventure being like the main one. So yeah, this card is pretty much just a custom card. Like a lot of Prank Kid players will be inclined to agree. So yeah, so that's it for the Forbidden Limited list in the OCG. Now we're going to talk about the real reason why I made this video, and that's because what is the future of Tearlaments post this Forbidden and Limited list? As you guys already know, this is pretty much like Konami's 3rd or 4th attempt at actually like addressing Tearlaments, and the OCG has not given up. Like I'm going to show you a few sample deck lists, and these are all under the current list that I just showed. And it kind of goes to show you that Konami, like, in order for Konami to get rid of Tearlaments, they're gonna have to do like a really hard check that pretty much just guts the strategy, or bring up a format where this deck can no longer be relevant. This is similar to the Burning Abyss situation we had back in 2017. Basically, the deck was playable for a couple of years, and then we got to a point where the format was just way too different and way too, like, strong for Burning Abyss to keep up. And now you don't see Burning Abyss even as a rogue strategy anymore. So we're pretty much in that same exact situation. I don't think the OCG is going to give up on Tearlaments anytime soon. But yeah, this is one build. This is playing Alistair with this card, the Magical Meltdown. For people who are familiar with me, they know I'm not a fan of this card. I think this card is very, very strong, very ill designed. So having a fusion strategy that involves like Magical Meltdown is very, very dangerous. It basically means that you cannot Ghost Bell like the tier effects. Whatever they fuse with the Tearlament monsters, you cannot respond to their summon. You have another dynamic for fusion summoning alongside the tier monsters, so you can make stuff like Mechaba, make stuff like this guy. That's also another ridiculous thing about this deck. This deck can make Caliga, and Caliga is a really, really strong like fusion monster. Like, this card can really end just games on the spot. So this is like one approach to Tearlaments that you're going to see. Also, take note of that Unicorn Pressure Planet Birth combination. You're going to see that in a bunch of deck lists. I'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, this is the Alistair version. It's pretty cool because it also plays Revolution Synchron. And if you open Alistair plus Revolution, it pretty much becomes a combo that can tutor your Tearlament cards. Basically what you do is you fuse into like Ancient Fairy Dragon, and then you bring back the Revolution. It turns the Ancient Fairy Dragon into the Visas Amritara, and Visas Amritara is just a very ridiculous card. So like, it can add any of the tiered cards. It can even add the Planet Perlora, So this is just one approach to the strategy. Here we see another one. So if you've been following this channel, if you've been seeing my Tearlament videos, you already know I'm very, very vocal on Cartesia, the Virtuous. This list plays 3 copies of Cartesia, and it also plays Fusion Deployment. I'm a really, really big fan of this engine. I think this engine is really, really strong for Fusion decks, especially since they are playing the Shadow package. It makes even more sense. This just goes to show you, how creative the OCG can get. But yeah, I'm really, really vocal on the Cartesia package. I think in the future we might see this in the TCG. At least if I were playing Tearlaments right now, I would be playing this card, and I would also be playing Deployment. Deployment is also kind of cool in this deck because you can reveal the Kaleido Heart, and you can summon the Rhino Heart, and then just start your fusion plays by dumping the Rhino Heart. So that's like another option with this deck. Let's look at the next one. This also has Cartesia, but this one does not have Fusion Deployment. This one is playing the Diabellstar. So basically, the monster that you're summoning with the Diabellstar is this guy right here, the Black Feather Darkwind Dragon. This is a ridiculously strong card. For those who don't know, I already made the videos around this card. But for those newer to the channel and they're like looking at this at first glance, this card is basically another Chaos Ruler. It has a condition tied to it. Basically, you have to take life points in order to do the mill effect. However, you do have cards that can circumvent that. Stuff like Blackwing Zephyros the Elite and Assault Synchron are both monsters that you can use in order to perfect that strategy. With Assault Synchron, it's kind of weird because it does not trigger your Tearlament names, at least the three main deck monsters. It does trigger everything else, so it does actually work in this deck, even if you don't mill to fusion summon with the Tearlament monsters. Another really strong thing about this deck is that it can play Baron, it can play Hot Red. So for people in the TCG who are watching this, take note, like this is stuff that we can actually do here in the TCG. The only difference is we don't have Glow Bulb. However, I don't think that's the end of the world. I think the Sinful Spoils engine, which is just Synchron, is just going to be like the next best thing to like circumvent that. I think in a build like this one, I would actually be playing more copies of Blackwing Zephyros. Despite this effect being once per duel, just getting the effect of the Darkwing Dragon like online very efficiently is a really strong boon with this card. It's also a fusion material you can use with Cartesia for Grangwinol. It's also a dark monster, so you can fuse into like the Mud Dragon. Even though we don't see Mud Dragon in this build, you can also make the Mud Dragon with the Blackwing Zephyros. So yeah, this build is very good to look at if you're going to study for Age of Overlord. Let's go to the next one. So this one plays Horus. This is another engine that's getting introduced in Age of Overlord. A really, really ridiculous engine. So I think in the future I will be discussing Horus a little bit more. I've talked about it in this channel a little bit. But Age of Overlords is just going to be a very imperative format for you to learn, because it, similar to how Dune shifted the environment and changed like the current TCG format, I think Age of Overlord is just going to shift it even more so than it is at the moment. But yeah, so another thing to notice about this deck is we're seeing SP Little Knight in a couple of them. That's another card that you're going to see a lot. Like pretty much every build is running it, at least every one I've shown so far. Almost every build showed King of the Swamp. So that's pretty much that tells you like that card is going to be a staple. Now I'm going to show you the last Tearlament list, and this one is very, very interesting. Also before I... Yeah, let me just cover it. Yep. So this is a Revolution build. However, you will notice here in the extra deck, there are very, very little fusion monsters. There's only like 4 of them. Pretty much this is not a real Tearlament deck. This is Tearlaments as an engine. And it's basically like an Adventure Horus synchro pile, you can call it. But this goes to show you that worst case scenario, if you don't play Tearlaments as a strategy anymore, at least in the OCG, you will be playing it as an engine, and it really facilitates a lot of strategies, like as a small side engine. Now let's talk about the Kashtira. So we have 1 Unicorn, 1 Pleasure Planet, 1 Birth. The reason you see only 1 Unicorn, 1 Planet is because they're both limited in the OCG. This is very, very, very important to look at, because both these cards are at, well, Unicorn's at 2, but Pressure Planet is at 3 here in the OCG. Meaning that there's nothing stopping actual players from actually playing the Kashtira cards in a dedicated Tearlament deck and just use Birth as a very small engine to just recur back like the Tearlaments Kashtira, or recur back Unicorn, and like do something like rank 7s or like synchro plays like with the cards. Another thing is we still have Kashtira Fenrir and we have it at 3. So that is just going to make this engine even more potent like over here in the TCG if you decide to go that route. Um, so in conclusion, like we can say from the following is that Rescue Ace is still going to be a top contender. Purely and Centurion will probably be like this 2nd and 3rd best deck. We're pretty much looking at a trifecta format with maybe Tearlaments being squeezed in for 4th place and maybe even more than that. I think post Age of Overlord here in the TCG, like Tearlaments is going to be like a really, really dominant force, if not like the best deck. I don't think Rescue Ace is going to be the best deck here in the TCG. I think Tearlaments is a little stronger here than it is in the OCG. And the main reason the OCG was like having Rescue Ace as a dominant strategy is because of the existence of Maxi. So yeah, this is just a small discussion. Well, it's not small, it's like 31 minutes. But this is a discussion I kind of wanted to make because our format is about to change. And looking at this OCG list, I think that there are many trends that are happening in the OCG that is going to follow suit here in the TCG. And it's only just a matter of time. I think on like there's not really nothing stopping Tearlaments from being a top tier contender. I think Rescue and Purely are here to stay as well. And once Age of Overlord rolls around, we're going to see a lot of engine cards, like a lot of like side engine cards in a lot of strategies. And yeah, it's very, very important for everyone to keep up. Otherwise, like we're looking at a crazy format like the one we had with the Adventure Punk pile deck, the based deck, for those who remember. But yeah, that's it from me. I hope you found this informative. I hope you found this to your understanding. Keep practicing and keep dueling.